Wonderful. Well, welcome everyone. I want to thank you for joining us today. We have a special guest this afternoon for our episode. Maura Eliza is joining us, and Maura is a certified naturopath, and she works in this really unique space of helping women reclaim their lives after divorce. So, working through trauma and that whole body, emotional, spiritual connection that can really keep women stuck and frustrated and unhappy for a really long time. So, I think it's work that you do is amazing. Thank you for joining us today, Maura.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to have this conversation. Like I said, I think this is a space that's really, really needed. And I think really needed, especially in the age group that we're working with. It seems like women go through, well, we have a lot on our plates, and then we like go through the whole change of hormones again, and it often, you know, negatively impacts our relationship. Or maybe we're just finally tired of the relationship and the garbage and things that go along with that, and we're tired of dealing with it, so we choose us, but we don't always know what to do. So I think this is a really cool space. How did you get into this space?
Well, I myself am divorced. And it took me a couple of years of like, oh my gosh. But at some point, I got really honest with myself and had to think, like, okay, where is the gap between what happened and what I'm taking accountability for? And there were things I was taking accountability. I was doing an okay
Mhm.
job with that. But I stumbled upon some resources that were like, one of those really good wake up calls that kind of feel like a punch in the gut. And I'm like, I really believe that like that relationship was a great relationship for where I was at the time. And, just we both moved into different phases. So I don't think that my marriage is a mistake or anything like that. But I did think like, well, I want to know exactly how to keep from entering into the same kind of dynamic again.
Mhm.
And it's funny you mentioned hormones because our lives impact our bodies and our hormones
Mhm.
included. So
Oh
when
yeah.
you have a relationship where you are overworking, overperforming in what commonly is called in the masculine, and the
Mhm.
dynamics are reversed, that will actually impact your hormones. So being a traditional naturopath, I was able to bring and being familiar with something called German New Medicine, I was able to not only bring on board the self development, self awareness, like radical honesty piece, but also a connection with your symptoms. The physical symptoms that you're experiencing are connected to everything in your life, including the relationship chaos. And we can use your biggest symptoms, the most pressing ones, the ones that drive you the most crazy, as your body's like start here sign, like start
Mhm.
here for working on this. And then when you use German New Medicine to like figure out, okay, well, what is the belief system that you're holding? What is the pattern? What are the triggers that you're coming up on that are keeping you in this chronic pattern? So we kind of kill two birds with one stone, um, where we are doing self development work and it's also yielding physical changes in a totally different
Mhm.
physical reality for these people. And it's just it's a light and airy but very potent, powerful program. Like that's what people keep telling me. Like this is actually really fun. I can't believe we did all of that in 30 minutes. Oh my gosh! So
Oh wow.
we do a lot of laughing, actually. That's
Good.
when we know we've hit the breakthrough.
Right? Yeah. No, I think that that's so interesting. You mentioned some self-development work and bringing self-awareness, and that extreme self-awareness, I think is a big part that's missing for a lot of women. Like they're often, coming from a place, I'm sure where they are being overworked and
Mhm.
overperformed. And it's not that it's sudden. It's been a gradual buildup, and
Mhm.
along with that, I'm sure comes a ton of emotional work that also needs to be done.
Absolutely. And it's both. It's both and it's both from
Hmm.
women and it's both at women. So
Hmm.
like, I know that I for myself when I started on this journey of like I'm going to step into a different dynamic. And I went on a coffee date with this man, and the cafe was a little crowded. There was like one. couch that looked like it would be a really good spot, and it looked like the guy was that was sitting on the couch was getting ready to get up, and I was like, I found myself being like, okay, we're gonna sit right here, and like taking that charge,
Uh-huh.
and I was like, nope, I am going to like me, I'm just gonna hold back a bit, and all of this thought process was very challenging in about 0.5 seconds. Like that's how
Right.
fast I would normally lead in and like solve the problem,
Mhm.
organize everything, and like to get my nervous system to just be like,
Mhm.
hold back was at the same time terrifying and also really satisfying and relieving. so so that's what when I say there's lots of fun to be had to change these dynamics. And even just understanding, I always tell people, so sometimes women do not like to hear this,
Mhm.
but your ex held your healing codes. So the reason why you got into that relationship, even with, this is not to excuse abuse or any narcissistic anything, this is not to excuse them and their behavior, but if you look back, when we start to look back, we see that there were patterns and there were needs and there were things already set in place before you even met that person.
Mhm.
And so that person continues to come and bring you with a new opportunity for healing above healing into a different dynamic and to
Mhm.
understand yourself on a deeper level. So when I say they hold your healing codes, that can look like a lot of different things. Um, like the ex who's not paying child support. Like, are you really so focused on where money is not coming from, that you forget the money comes from everywhere? I was talking to a woman about this exact thing, and she's like, this is what I needed to hear today. And she told me this story about how her son had bought it was kind of like a photo album, but it was for baseball cards.
Mhm.
He had bought it at a church bazaar, so he doesn't even collect. But he got attached to this thing. He would carry it around, and her friend who is into baseball cards was like flipping through it, and he found a card worth $10,000 in his book. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, you just laugh when you remember, like, oh yeah, I could get a raise. I could have a side hustle that takes off. You never know, some long lost resident, like money can be found somewhere. You just never know when it's gonna be. And the healing code is to recognize, like, here's what I'm doing. What could I be doing instead?
Right. Yeah, no, that sounds like that could be a tremendous shift, um, in so many different areas for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're going through the process of working with someone and they come in and they have, so many there's so much emotion wrapped up in divorce. Do you see that impacts the body physically?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
well, we've all had this experience, right? Like if most people are afraid to speak publicly, and those
Mhm.
symptoms you'll feel that in your body, upset stomach or tight shoulders, or just, feeling like you're going to pass out. Like everybody's a little bit different, but it is a very common physiological response to something that is emotional, and
Mhm.
your perspective around that. So um, it's just amazing to be able to, look at weight gain or look at digestive issues or look at skin issues or, any number of what's labeled autoimmune,
Mhm.
and to start to unpack those because they are linked to a specific thing. Like weight gain can be the feeling unsafe. A lot of women
Mhm.
who are moving from a two income household to a one income household. Some of these women have never worked before. They were stay at home moms. How am I going to be able to survive financially? Another thing that can impact weight gain can be losing your community. Even in places where you don't expect, church or wherever, you can lose a lot of people that you didn't expect to lose. And it can be really ostracizing to go through a divorce. Um, and then just feeling isolated, feeling like you're alone. All of those things can
Mhm.
cause the kidney collecting tubules to react, to start collecting water, and we have weight gain. And so we kind of go through things like that. Like, where do you want to start? And we start to use hypnosis, we use various nervous system techniques to kind of make them more aware and to shift the dynamics around so that the body doesn't have to respond in the same way anymore.
Right. No, that's so true. So you've said nervous system a couple times, and that sounds like it's a big part of the work that you're doing, which makes complete sense. But for our listeners, how does the nervous system, I guess, impact potential health issues or potential weight issues that you see coming out of a situation like
So I think of it as kind of our health overall as like a tiered
that? Mm,
pyramid, which one piece resting on the other piece, and on all the pieces are important. So at the bottom, we have the physical. We have, are we exercising? What are we eating? What are those kinds of things? Then we have like kind of a chemical, what's going on with your hormones. This is where people might get into taking certain supplements and trying
mhm,
to like hit specific nutrients that they think that they're deficient in. The next level is the nervous system, and most people are familiar with fight or flight
mhm,
or rest and digest. And it actually is, it's a little more nuanced than that. We have, pro-social pieces to that. So like an athlete is in technically fight or flight. They're like, their muscles are getting all this blood flow and their digestion kind of stops, but it doesn't feel traumatic or dangerous because they're in a pro-social environment where there's
mhm,
rules to the game. They can be reasonably assured what their opponent is going to do, and it's a lot different than being chased down the street right by a stranger.
right.
So there's kind of that aspect to everything. But if your body, the nervous system also controls whether you are in response to a conflict. In German New Medicine, we call that conflict active,
Mm,
or whether you're in a healing process. And most of us think of healing as what we would call being sick. It can be when you get your fever, when you are stuck in bed. You're in like
mm,
super, super rest, like can't get out of rest kind of thing, because your body had made some adaptations during that fight or flight conflict active phase. Usually it's either taking away cells or adding cells to a different area
mhm,
based on what will help you survive what your perception thinks is going on. And then your body you have a resolution, and your body will go into healing where it has to do the opposite of what it did during the conflict phase. So that fever is there to send bacteria, fungus
mhm,
to your body to help put everything back the way it should be. There might be some rebuilding, some scarification that helps you be stronger. Kind of like at the gym when you're really sore at the gym
mhm.
after going to the gym. You didn't get sore during the workout, you got sore during the
Exactly.
healing phase. It's
Yeah.
exactly the same process. And what will happen, the very top tier of that pyramid, is the perception. So the perception of what's happening, like going back to the public speaking, if your perception is they're all going to laugh at me, that's going to do one thing. If your perception is, well, my presentation isn't very good, I'm not a very good speaker, you're going to have a different set of adaptations. If you're afraid you're going to trip and fall or something like that, then that's going to be a different set of perceptions, which will create at the nervous system level a different set of adaptations, which leads to a different healing, which also then affects, then the hormones come online and then your body is impacted too. You're stuck in bed or not.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've never thought of it as a pyramid visualization. And I think that's a really cool way to look at it. So super valuable information there. Um, gosh, you said something and I had a question. I should have jotted it down. Oh, perception. So I was honestly just thinking of that this morning. I have no idea why, but things just pop into your mind. And I was
Divine
like,
timing.
yeah. So I was thinking, our perception of things is the way that we view our current situation, whether it is an accurate view of what is truly going on is sometimes not necessarily true, but it doesn't mean that the way that you're seeing it is not true. And the way that you perceive something is what you believe can very often keep you stuck.
Mhm.
in a situation that maybe you're not entirely happy with. But if you believe that that's where it is and where you're stuck at, it can be incredibly hard to help a person overcome that. I'm kind of curious, is that a situation that you see with clients very often?
Oh, absolutely. Every single time, every single
Really?
time we could
Okay.
have the same we could have, two women who are going through on paper the same situation and
Mhm.
taking from it a totally different perception. We all have kind of like
Mhm.
almost our favorite flavor of
Right.
story that we like to put on
Yes.
situations, and who knows, I don't really know exactly where that comes from, if we're just born with it or if it's like those early imprinting or what.
Yeah.
But yeah, that, and then that way that perception will lead their nervous system to do different things during that conflict active phase.
Right.
So I don't know if you know about this. I think it was a study done by the CDC. I don't often say nice things about the CDC, but this one was this one was a good one where they did a really large scale survey on. It's called the ACEs study. Perhaps you've heard of it, but it stands for Adverse Childhood Effect Events.
Yes. Yes.
And so what they did is just a poll of these people before the age of 18, and
Mm,
it was just like a checklist of things that would have been negative or unpleasant that could have happened to you. And that can include divorce, that could include death of a parent, all the way to various forms of abuse, being
mhm,
in foster care, things like this that can be add trauma and stress to the childhood. So the higher the number that a person had of those ACEs, the more likely they were to have various, what we had thought of as lifestyle diseases.
mhm, mhm,
And so they were kind of showing that there was a direct correlation between stress in childhood and adult outcomes and adult health. But what they never really explained, or, kind of fell short, that I think German New Medicine helps fill in the gaps for this, is, well, why did one kid in foster care end up with diabetes and another one had heart disease, another one had that and obesity, and German New Medicine helps us have that answer and that understanding that their perception of and their story made them have the specific physical expression
mhm.
when their body went into that kind of stressful phase and healing phase.
Right. Yeah. So totally, totally physical, I guess, result or place of being based on perception.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Yeah.
it's not, I do not believe that just because your perception is the way that it is at the moment does not mean that it has to remain that way for the rest of your life. That's something that I believe really is in control of the individual, but would take some of what you mentioned in the beginning, some radical honesty with yourself.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just like we resist something for
Hmm.
so long that
Yeah.
when we lean into it a little bit, it dissolves. So I had a woman, Rebecca, she's in my testimonial, so I'm not sharing a private story, but she and I had worked on just this kind of nasty name that somebody had called her.
Mm.
And when we leaned into it and kind of flipped that script, he called her an old hack. She shared that. Um, and when we leaned into it, it was just a very simple, like, but what is an old hag? Like, what could be good about being, I mean, would everybody say you're old? Like, so we kind of went through that. And then what about the hag part? Like, what's the kind of cool thing about a hag? Like, so we kind of talked about some of the pressures that many women experience of, like, I have to be pretty every time I leave the house, or,
Mhm.
if I was just a hag, I wouldn't care. It just, within about 30 minutes, she was like, "Actually, this hag does not sound like a hag anymore. She sounds like a vixen." And okay, I'll own that. And we were laughing. Like I said, I
Yeah.
usually tell my clients, if we're laughing in 30 minutes, then we're on the right track. We did it right. So,
Right.
and she was laughing about it by the end of it. And I don't think another name really ever made her the same level of upset that that one had. But it did hit a bunch of healing points that she needed to address and
Right.
just didn't have the tools to be able to do that. So that's the thing that I love to bring about it. Like, I think people really look forward to our calls and our conversations so that because it's fun, because we were
Mhm.
like, I just show them some things that are really, really simple that but super powerful. And then you can use those for the rest of your life on pretty
Right.
much anything, really.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I have found, just throughout the years, throughout practice, um, that the simpler the tool, the better it is. Like you don't need complex practices. You don't need a 40-minute good morning routine. You need something that's simple and you need something that works for you, which is going to be different than, something that works for someone else usually.
Yeah. I always say you don't need 10 years of therapy, incense, or a high priestess to do this. We're gonna,
No, no.
you are the high priestess, really, like within yourself. Like, even that, none of those other people, and myself included, can't do something for a person that's not ready or willing to do it. So that's
Right.
when I see a lot of provider hopping, both
Hmm.
in my work with women with divorce and then my work with just the general public with chronic illness, is
Hmm.
that some people are just not ready for the work, or they want somebody to give them the pill, the,
Hmm.
metaphorical or literal pill. But it is just sitting with and not being afraid of the parts that you maybe have been afraid to sit with or have felt really painful, and that resolution happens a lot faster than you expect when you do sit with it.
Right. No, it really does. I think there's gosh, I can't remember for certain, but I know there's various stages of change. And like we have the pre-contemplation stage where we're kind of thinking about it, but not really thinking about it. And then there's like the
Mm.
contemplation where like maybe I should do something about this, maybe not. And then there's another step where they're ready, but they're really not ready. And I think that is where a lot of people, like you said, they will provider hop. And it's not that what whatever the issue is isn't important. They're just not really ready to address it right now, even though they thought they were.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of this, I'll tell people that because I'm a naturopath, I'm in that space.
Hmm.
People ask, "What's your best parasite cleanse?" I'm like, disconnecting from somebody else's energy. Disconnecting from the parasitic
Yeah.
energy around you, the codependence, trying to be what somebody else needs you to be, or getting into that space. And that can include family members, that can include an ex, that can include your kids, that can include providers that
Hmm.
you can, they want you to heal so that they can feel successful. And we all do this, right? Like
Oh
it's
yeah.
not necessarily, but those things, the energetic component is often so much more powerful than uh oh, let me think, black walnut
Oh
or
yeah.
whatever, like
Yeah.
because I do find like physical releases like that
Hmm.
after I have done emotional work, and like, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, no, the emotional piece is just huge. And I think inside of my space, a lot of women come in and they're like, I just need the right workout. I just need the right
Mhm.
meal plan. But it's not. It's so much more than that. It's, like you said, it goes back to trauma, it goes back to emotions, it can go all the way back to childhood, and how that influences how your body's acting right now. And we can
Yeah.
have the perfect plan, but if there's like our backlog of emotional baggage that we're still dragging around, it can be really, really challenging to achieve any kind of positive change.
Yeah, I sometimes call that religious nature, and I don't mean
Hmm.
like necessarily religious, but just how some people can get so dogmatic about anything, religion or
Oh, yeah. Oh, my
health,
gosh.
like their health beliefs, their diet, their like this is the right way to do something, and there's no grace for themselves. There's no
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
and when I was in kind of more of a strict, rigid place, I couldn't heal.
Right.
I couldn't even rest when I would give myself time to rest because I was always like, "Oh, I didn't do this. I didn't do that. I got to get up and do that." And I was like so busy stressing about that that when I started to give myself the grace to just be like, "I want to listen to my body. If my body says that I need to rest and sleep today,
Hmm.
I'm going to sleep. And I don't care. I just have to trust that I'm not going to sleep the rest of my life away." And I found that, and if I forget a supplement, I'm not going to worry about it. And
Hmm.
I have found to this day, this has been a couple years ago where I started that process. To this day, I take just very, very minimal supplements. I am very like I am more focused on flow and as much
Mhm.
as I can. I have a lot of freedom for flow. Not everybody has as much, but also the joy of things. So I started dancing after I got divorced. I never could have
Oh,
done that when I was married. I started Latin dancing and, you know, if old me would be like, "Oh, but I have to stay up late and I'm gonna be sweating and then I have to eat something before I go to bed and da 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 da," and it would have been all like so many reasons to say no.
yeah.
But the joy that I get out of dancing and the fun that I get out of it makes all of that other stuff not a problem. I wake up just fine. I mean, I do have little tricks. I don't drink when I dance because I'm sweating a lot and like I have certain drinks to refuel myself so I can sleep well. But the staying up late does not bother me. The like the change to my routine. I am able to get up the next day and mother my sons and work and it doesn't throw me for a loop the way I would have worried. And I know people, can get caught into this with a lot of things that can get caught into this with food. I had a woman tell me the other day she ate fast food and it ruined her for 3 days. And I was like, hang on, that's a story. Like, let's talk
Yeah,
about this. You've programmed yourself to
yeah.
believe that, and we got to unprogram that. And just knowing that she could unprogram and doesn't have to live in that pattern
Mhm.
was a revelation to her. But yeah, you have to be willing to be wrong. You have to be willing to give yourself grace. You have to be like take the focus off of perfectionism. It's a
Mhm.
lot of it's a lot of big work.
It is, it is. But I think it's so important because without it, I really think that we have a tendency to live more of like that rigid life of fulfilling
Mhm.
other people's expectations. And really, and this is a conversation I have with clients all the time, we have to look out at the big picture. We get one life. And if we're
Mhm.
not doing things that are fulfilling to us, if we're not caring for our own needs, nobody else is going to like be our fairy godmother and do it for us.
Yeah, I actually saw a meme a couple times around that's like, no, we only die once, but we live every day. And
Yes,
I was not put on this earth to never drink a sip of alcohol. I mean, it's fine if you don't want to, but like
right.
to never dance and to never eat cake and to
Yeah.
never,
Oh, cake is
you know?
good.
And I did kind of have that expectation of myself for a while. And it did not lead me to healing. It did not lead me to
No.
happiness. It did not lead me to rest. It just made me feel chaotic and stressed. And going back to kind of the original beginning of our conversation is that I see a lot of women, married or unmarried, can put themselves kind of into that leadership, like this is
Hmm.
the way it has to be, blah 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 blah, and like shouldering so much, including like trying to teach the men around them, the men that they date, their husbands, their brothers, their how to be. And
Hmm.
like, you know what? You could just step out of that one and save yourself a lot of scripting and a lot of arguing and a lot of
Right.
just like so we did dip into a little bit of like negotiating, like working with men and energetic tips for starting to start dating and like
Mm.
simple boundaries to have. I'll tell people that sometimes, your filter, is it like the big holes like in a pasta filter where you strain the pasta
Yeah.
out, or is it like a fine mesh coffee filter that like even gets the little gunk out? Like let's fine tune this filter a little bit, and sometimes that's the healing work that they have to do,
Mm.
where they just say when somebody shows them something that's not ideal and downright bad, they just say, okay, and they walk away rather than explaining and teaching
Right.
and all of that stuff. So,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that filter can go both ways for sure.
yes, yes, yes.
Um, well, gosh, I feel like we've covered a ton of information.
Gosh.
Um, if I just want to ask, so if someone was coming out of a marriage and they were like, I think I really need to, deal with some of this emotional trauma that's been following me for however many years. What would first steps look like if they wanted to pursue working with you?
Oh, so working with me, my course opens and closes about every season.
Okay.
So, and the way that they can find that is thevibrantway.com.
Mm.
When my course isn't open, I have a really great email list that sends tips, that sends healing hacks, that sends perception shifts and things that, like thought exercises about once or twice a week. And you can just join that for free and be receiving those. And then I also have a couple of like mini courses that are just available all the time. So at
Okay.
thevibrantway.com, you can find both of those. I have something called the Divorce Detox, which is
Oh,
just a quick little hypnosis and exercise. It's actually the first exercise that we do in the Vibrant Way, and because it is such a powerful shift. And then there's a video about changing the energy between yourself and your ex without
mhm.
his permission or cooperation, as well as 13 tips for when you want to start dating again.
Oh,
Um, and even I have something called the Love My Fupa guide. The fupa,
oh,
the
yeah.
the area between the pubic bone and the belly button, how that
That
I
gets a
mean,
lot of hate.
there's a lot of hate in there. That's where all of our feminine organs are, or most of our feminine organs are, our uterus, our
Right.
ovaries.
Yeah.
And I go through, according to German New Medicine, what are the conflicts and the possible experiences that may cause you to hold weight and fluid there. So even that in
Mm,
itself is like a guide for, can be used for divorce or with or without divorce. So I'm always
right.
adding things to that area. So that can be a fun place to find courses when the Vibrant Way is working with some other people.
Right. No, that's awesome. That's really cool. Yes, that area, holy smokes. I'm sure you're like in some communities and it does. It gets oh, and it's not the men hating on it, it is the women hating on it.
It really is. It really is. Like, I mean, but sometimes it can be a response to like a negative comment that somebody said,
Mhm.
or I actually started thinking about that as a joke. I was like, oh man, what would German New Medicine say about my fupa? And I was like, well, what would it say?
Uh-huh.
And so I started digging in, and right away I hit on that I have two boys, and I really wanted to have a little baby girl. And one of
Oh,
the yeah, one and instead I got divorced. And so one of the conflicts in there is like a procreation conflict. Like you couldn't
oh,
procreate the way you wanted to, or you wanted more children, or you didn't want
mhm.
children, or like something along those lines can be held in one of the organs in the area. And it was pretty dramatic because I think I looked that up on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and I was out to lunch with a friend on Friday. And he's like, "Why do you keep looking down at your stomach?" And I'm like, it really felt, I think it really got smaller, like a
Oh,
lot smaller
really?
within that couple days because it was just fluid in there.
Yeah.
So you can release fluid really quickly, and
Yes.
I have watched it. Like there's multiple organs in there, sometimes multiple conflicts. So I
Mhm.
have watched that like change dramatically with
Wow.
that work.
That is really cool. I know we've used up a ton of time. I think we might have to have another conversation in the future about German new medicine because I have a colleague that's very, very interested in that for like some personal reasons, but I haven't met a practitioner and I would love to talk to you more on that subject.
Oh, I would love to come back and talk to that and
Yeah,
talk about
no,
that, dive
this
deeper in
sounds
there.
like super, super fascinating.
It is.
Yeah.
Dr. Hammer, who discovered all this, was a man just brilliant, full of integrity. We were really blessed to have had him on this earth. So I would love to come and talk about his work.
All right, fantastic. Well, we'll have to do that on a different day. Because I don't want to take up your entire day. All right. But thank you so much. I think you've shared a ton of information. I will make sure that we get the website for your Vibrant Way up on, underneath the recording so people can find your courses. And just thank you for sharing your story, for sharing what you've learned, how you're helping people. I think it's absolutely fantastic.
It was my pleasure, and I hope some of your listeners can take some really good information away from that. And I look forward to seeing them in the Vibrant Way.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Sure.